All right, welcome everybody. So, welcome to my new playlist. This is something that was on the books for me to do and finally went ahead and got around doing it. So, what I wanted to talk about in this series is just kind of taking us back, going back in time. Happy New Year, by the way. So, with it being a new year, I can't help but reminisce to a couple years back or even to back in my childhood. I'm sure a lot of us do, right? I'm sure, some of us might have kids, some of us maybe are just adults and we kind of have to prep everything. Maybe you're hosting, whether it be Christmas or any other holiday, depending whatever it is that you celebrate. But, when it comes around the holidays, I usually can't help but reminisce. And a lot of this is because, well, for one, I have a good memory. That's one thing that I pry on. I just have a phenomenal memory, especially things that were just so memorable. I can't help but keep them inside and, keep things close to my heart. So I wanted to just do this channel or this playlist, better said, to just kind of talk about that. Maybe things in the past that were good times that brought us joy, whatever. So, if you're at the gym, if you're at your home, or if you're at work, put this on. This is going to be more of a podcast kind of style. So it's something that, if you enjoy my content, you're going to enjoy this as well. And definitely subscribe, if you like content like this, because I like to do a lot of stuff. I don't just stick to one genre or one particular IP. I like to discuss a lot of things, and that's kind of the goal for this channel. This channel is mainly just so that I can come here and talk to you guys and talk about things that I enjoy and that I love. A little bit about things that are going on around the world, but for the most part, just things that we enjoy. Now, wanted to start with this one because I think this is a big one, and that's Pokemon, right? I think that's something, even if you aren't a fan, weren't a fan, you've had to have had some exposure or know a little bit about Pokemon, because I just feel in this day in the world, we just everybody knows, right? Now, I wanted to go over for my first episode in one of these retro talks and talk about Pokemon games and the influence that they had on me as a child, a little bit about my story, and just a little bit about reminiscing. Like, it is about Pokemon, but it really is more about me and kind of just looking back at the good old days, and maybe you can resonate with me, right? Maybe you're hearing me talk and it's making you go back and, thinking of good times with your, either your siblings, with your parents, or maybe you're an only child and you're just thinking back to the good old times. So that's what I wanted to talk about. So, Pokemon. Like I said, this isn't really a video to explain about Pokemon, but it's more so me reminiscing on the good old days and kind of the impacts that Pokemon had on me. So, to begin with, I had a, I have one sister, and for the most part, we were always close growing up. However, when it came to certain things, I was more of a loner in the sense where, obviously, yes, I had friends at school, would hang out with friends, but there was also certain times where I would just like to do things by myself. Playing games was definitely one of them. Now, for some reason, I never owned a Nintendo, or it took a while for me to own a Game Boy, which is what I'm going to get into. But for some reason, my parents just always bought me PlayStation. Like, for some reason, every time I would say, "Hey, get me a Nintendo," they're like, "No, we'll get you a PlayStation." Though I was like, "Okay, I mean, I'll take it." So for the most part, during my early childhood and teens, I always had the PlayStation and the PlayStation 2. It wasn't until I became a teenager where I was working a little bit and was able to save some money where I bought myself the Xbox 360. But for the most part, I always had the PlayStation, right? Now, when it came to Pokemon, and you have to understand, like, I'm 32 right now, so back when Pokemon came out, or the series, back what, I think it was 97. Put in the comment section if I got that wrong, but I want to say it's around 97. So I was, around 6, 7 years old, right, tops. And I remember seeing the Pokemon games, and I remember it took everyone by storm. Like, it just looked so cool. But like I said, for whatever reason, my parents just never got me the Game Boy. They were just like, "No, we'll get you a PlayStation." I secretly think they just didn't want me like going, everywhere with it. Kind of like how we are with phones today, where we just go everywhere. And not saying we play games on it or anything, but for the most part, it can be very easy to just kind of get into your phone and start using it. So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking, but who knows? Let me know if your parents were like that too, or if you went through something similar. Well, anyways, I think it was around 2001, maybe 2002. This is where I have a great memory, but when it comes to putting them at certain times and like what year and what month, that's where it can be a little bit difficult. So I never got to play Pokemon Red or Fire, or I'm sorry, no, Red and Blue, like the OGs for the Game Boy. Now, around like I said, 2001 or 2002, I couldn't have been more than 9 or 10 years old. My stepfather, he worked at an airport, the city I lived, and I got really lucky because I guess in one of the planes they had left a Game Boy with a game in it, and no one, I guess they waited like, I don't know how much time they waited, but no one ever picked it up. So he ended up just keeping it. So he ended up giving it to me, and I was like, awesome. I actually was really appreciative of that because it was like, you know, I had a sister, but maybe it was because he felt she was too young. But he chose to give it to me, so I was like, cool, because I actually always wanted one. So I immediately get this Game Boy, and it's actually the one on the picture. It's the purple one, the see-through one, and it has Pokemon Crystal. And man, would I come to love the hell out of that game. I immediately got drawn to that game. It was so much fun to play, and that's kind of where some of my good memories come into play. And I still remember, putting it in and getting to choose the starters. I think by now, I don't remember if the season, like if the show was caught up to the Pokemon Crystal, because Crystal's Gen 2, right? I don't remember if the show was already on season 2, but I remember for sure the first season had been out. Because you know how in America it takes a while for them to dub, so for a year or two you keep getting the same season. It keeps repeating, kind of like they did with DBZ and some other ones. So that was kind of the same thing. I think it might be where we knew about the Gen 2 Pokemon through the games and through other stuff, but I don't think the anime was out yet where you could see the whole, here in the Western area. But anyways, I knew some of them. So I remember I turned on the game and you choose the starters. And I still remember choosing Totodile, which to this day is my favorite Pokemon. His evolution, all three of them are my favorite Pokemon. I have so many like stuffed animals of him and cards of him. But yeah, he's actually why he's my favorite Pokemon, because my very first Pokemon that I ever chose as a starter in any Pokemon game period was Totodile. And I was immediately drawn to him. He's a water type, looks like a crocodile. I love crocodiles, alligators, I think they're cool. So, and away we were. And man, I remember playing the hell out of the game. It was so many good memories. I remember I would take it to school when I could. I remember, and for those of you that remember the Game Boy Color with those screens, like they are super dark. Even though they had color, which back then we were like, oh wow, this is great. Well, the thing is, when it was kind of like dark, or you were in a dark room, it was difficult to see. So I actually have a buddy that told me that, because he played with the original Fire. I'm sorry, keep calling him Fire. We'll get to that, but Red and Blue. He actually told me that when he would play those games, he would play in the dark, and that he knew what city he was in because of the music, and that he would memorize what Pokemon would come out because of the sound, the cry of the Pokemon. And I was like, man, that is some next level stuff. Like, I never got that close or that deep into it where I was that good, where I could be like, oh, I know the cry. But I would try to play at night, like I'm sure a lot of us did after we were supposed to go to bed, and I was there playing, and man, it was just so addicting. Like, to this day, I can't think of a game that, at least from a portable perspective, that just immediately hooked me like that. And I think that was my very first portable experience, because that was my very first portable device. I think I had or my parents had bought me some of those other ones where they're like joysticks. You plug them in, remember, to the TV with the little RCA plugs, the yellow, white, and red. So I had played some of those, I think, but obviously it's not the same, right? Because it's still like a TV. You can take it on the go, and if you go to a buddy's house, but it's not the same as playing a Game Boy, right? So I just have so many memories, and I think the other day I forgot what made me think of the Game Boy, because we were here, gathered for the holidays, and I just remembered how much fun I would have. And it's different when you're a kid, right? Because it's like you have school, you have obviously commitments, you have goals, but it's not the same as being an adult. So you're just there kind of like playing, and I just have so many memories of like the summer and just being so excited when school was out, and telling my buddies like, oh man, we're gonna Pokemon it up. And unfortunately, a lot of my friends didn't have a Game Boy, but we would take turns, and I didn't care that they were on my own save file. Obviously, you get to a point where you kind of do everything in the game. But what I liked about this game, because you also have to remember, this was in a time where the internet wasn't that prevalent. And nowadays, everybody has a computer, everybody has a smartphone. Hey, you're stuck in a game or in a puzzle or anything in life, right? You can Google it. Chances are someone has found a solution, and you can just kind of use that to get your way around it. Well, back then it wasn't like that, right? Like there was a couple forums here and there, but for the most part, I really wasn't. I never really thought to use a computer. I kind of just would try to figure it out myself. So you would just play the game way longer than today. It's like today. You play Pokemon Crystal, you can probably on a ROM or something, you can probably pass it in 2 days. Yeah, I mean, obviously maybe not the whole thing, but you probably could if you really just played all day. But back then it was a lot difficult. One, batteries. That thing run on batteries. You have to keep switching batteries. Two, the screen, like I said, wasn't that great, and it wasn't really well known what you had to do. Like I remember I would spend days just taking my time and battling, and I remember I'd get home from school, I'd immediately start playing and just have a blast. And going back to what I said earlier, like those summers, man, so precious. Like I remember just not having a care in the world, school's out, and you just get to stay up late every day. I would always have the TV on, and I would just always be playing. I still remember that, and man, it doesn't get any cozier than that. During most summers, I did have to help my parents out and have to do certain stuff to kind of, build my allowance and pull my weight around the house. But I mean, it wasn't the same as having to go to school. For the most part, I would get to literally go to sleep late, wake up, turn it on. I remember I would literally go to sleep with the Game Boy next to me. Now, so man, it takes me back. But let me know if you've had any situations like that, or you remember any good memories like that. I really want to know. I'm just curious to hear some of y'all's. But Pokemon just had such a big influence, and it was just such a good time. And then I remember moving forward into the story a little bit. I remember, so this is how addictive I got. I remember one time, I don't know what I was doing in the game. I think it was something RNG related, where you just have to keep trying it over and over until you get the outcome you want, or the Pokemon appears. I don't remember. But I remember I got so addicted to it that I ended up taking it near the shower. And I didn't full on go into it with the shower, but I had it, near there. And I remember I grabbed it to check what had popped up or whatever, and it got wet. And of course, me being as dumb as I was, I accidentally wet it, and it unfortunately stopped working. And I was so sad because at that time I remember I was playing two games. It was the Crystal and then this other game, Dragon Ball Z game, which that can be its own video, but Dragon Ball Z Legendary Super Warriors, that's another game that I really love. It's just amazing. I don't think it's very popular. I've never heard anyone talk about it. I know everybody talks about the Legacy of Goku 1, 2, Boost Fury, which I love those games, by the way, too. That would come later in my life when those would come out, or when I would get them. But I really like those two. So I was playing those two games, and I remember, and it was such a tease too, because it didn't, the Game Boy wouldn't flat out just stop working. You would turn it on, and then it would turn on if it's going to play normal, and then it would just shut down, and it would keep doing that for a couple days until it finally just gave out and it wouldn't turn on at all. And man, I was so devastated. Luckily, I don't know how much long later. I remember it was for my birthday. Whatever my next birthday was, I don't think it was too long. I think it was it couldn't have been more than a couple months that I had to wait. And for my birthday, my parents got me, my grandparents, my parents got me the new Game Boy Advance SP. Because by then, that bad boy was already out. And they got me Legacy of Goku 2 that came out. So fun fact, I skipped Legacy of Goku 1. I have played it. I played it later in my life. I bought it later. But as far as when it comes to the games that I touched first, I actually touched Legacy of Goku 2, which was amazing as well, right? Because for those of you that know, that game is considered to be the best out of those three, and the most flawless one. It's even better than the third part. But anyways, going back to Pokemon, shortly after Fire Red would release, which is Fire Red and Leaf Green, which was kind of the remakes of the very first Generation 1 Pokemon games, being Pokemon Red and Blue. and I remember I chose Pokemon Leaf Green because I just wanted to be different. I've kind of always been like that, where most people are gonna go for the Fire Red because Charizard's on the cover. So I kind of just went with the green one because I always wanted to play the OG games. Because one thing that I will tell you this about Crystal, I did play Crystal a lot, but I really didn't have any game charts. I didn't have friends that really had the Game Boy SP, or I'm sorry, the Game Boy Color with me, so I never traded. So it definitely left a very big, void, wanting to be able to experience some of the Gen 1 Pokemon. So when they announced the remakes, I was super hyped. And I remember I went to GameStop and I bought my Leaf Green. I don't think I have it, unfortunately. I think I ended up, throughout my years selling it to get something else at GameStop. But I remember getting that game. And again, to me, it didn't matter who I chose, like Fire Red or Leaf Green, because I was going to choose Squirtle regardless. Because, like I mentioned to you, I love the Totodile. He's my favorite Pokemon. So I wanted to keep going in that tradition, at least for my first playthrough, right? So I played Fire Red, and man, I honestly think that game was even more addicting to Crystal. The only thing about Fire Red, I think it was a little bit easier to play. I didn't feel it was as long because, as you know, Crystal, you play through the Gen 2 story because you're a gold, and then you play into you do the Johto region and you do the Pallet Town, or the Indigo Plateau, sorry. So with this one, you did have some extra content. You do the Indigo Plateau, and it had a couple extra content like with the civil islands and all that. But it was pretty quick. What did keep me entertained though is the trading feature of it, because by then Pokemon Sapphire and Pokemon Emerald and Ruby were all out. And my younger cousin, he had Pokemon Emerald, and he also had an SP, a Game Boy SP. So we traded so much. So like we were literally able to stack our rosters, and man, it was so awesome. Again, same thing. I remember, driving big road trips or staying up late just playing Pokemon. It was awesome. It was just so influencing. I think I am still very big on portable games. I obviously play, PC games because those are my favorite right now. But I cannot turn down a good portable game. I actually, a couple of weeks ago, because I got myself a PS Vita, and I was able to download and put Pokemon Crystal into it. I put Pokemon Crystal and Pokemon Yellow and Fire Red, and I played Crystal and Fire Red within a couple of weeks, and passed it and did some extra stuff, exploration, caught some of the legendaries, and man, it took me back too. And just getting to play it on a better portable, it's just an even better experience. But obviously nothing's gonna beat that experience as a kid. Just getting to be there in your room at night, not having to worry about school if you're in summer, and just getting to play some Pokemon, and going to sleep, waking up, playing some more. It's just, I think it's I think it's times that we take for granted that we're like, man, and we just we forget, like, to enjoy the moment. Because again, I don't have any kids. For those of you that have kids, maybe you can chime in. But if I were to have a kid, I'd probably just tell him, dude, enjoy your childhood. You're never gonna get it again, because there'll be a time where you're gonna have to be an adult, and you're gonna have responsibilities. And yeah, I mean, you can still play. There's nothing wrong with being an adult and playing games. I still do it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Whatever makes you happy in life, that doesn't matter what age you are. But it's gonna come a time where you're gonna have responsibilities. Like today, I still play games, but it's not like back then where it's like, oh, I just have school, or I just have, or I don't work tomorrow, or I don't have to go to school tomorrow. No, like, I actually have a job, so yeah, I can play, but I have to kind of put that self of responsibility upon myself, and kind of just know when to cut myself off, kind of thing. But yeah, no, I mean, just really wanted to reminisce a little bit and talk about how Pokemon really influenced me. And overall, like I mentioned in the past, I think it just motivated me just to really get into portable games, because there's a lot of portable games that I would come to play after. A lot of systems that I would get. I would get the PSP. Like I told you, I have the PS Vita. I have the Switch. I love portability. To me, when you're going on an airport and you're going on a on a flight or a long road trip, and you're not the one driving, I think it's just awesome having that option of just pulling that out and just entertaining. And you know, with me, like, I'm kind of one of those people that always has to be doing something. Doesn't have to be physical, but just my mind likes to just always be thinking about something or doing something. So I think that's another reason why portable games just resonated with me so much, and that's why I got drawn to Pokemon so much. And it was just good times, just really good times. To kind of end the story, like I mentioned, I would get into Fired Red and the Fired Red and Leaf Green series. And yeah, I played it for, you know, maybe a year or two, got still pretty into it. But like I said, it just didn't feel as hard as Crystal, at least for me. It just felt a little bit quicker. So after a while, I did kind of get, I don't want to say bored, but I just got new games and new challenges. So that kind of what happened. So unfortunately, I can't say that like I'm a diehard Pokemon fan. So I didn't necessarily stay with the IP. I do collect some of the cards, even as an adult. Not super driven into it, but you know, I have a couple for my collection. Like I have a lot of Feraligatr cards. Like I mentioned, he's my favorite Pokemon. That evolution line, they're my favorite. But still good times, and I think Pokemon's always going to be a game that whenever I see it, even if it's a remake, it's just going to put a smile on my face because it's going to take me back to all those good memories and all those good times. But yeah, that was my story. Like I said, you know, if you're at the gym or you're just there, want to hear a little conversation, feel free. I just wanted to share some of my stories and kind of the joy that Pokemon brought to me, and more specifically the Pokemon games. Obviously, yes, I do love Pokemon. I saw the show, and I do think a lot of the Pokemon are great, but specifically the games, right? Which I know were an impact to all of us, and I mean, we all know Pokemon games were a big hit, especially here in the Western Coast. But yeah, what about you? You know, were you into some of these games? Was it maybe a different game that you had, or maybe you did something completely different? You know, I did also play outside, but just kind of wanted to specifically talk about the Pokemon games because I think it was something that just took me off guard that would influence me to today. Like I mentioned, I still enjoy playing portable games. But yeah, let me know, you know, in the comment section. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like this content. Like I said, this is episode 1, so whenever I have a chance, I'll be putting more of these. Like I said, these are meant to be more of my podcast type of videos where I can just kind of talk and, you know, talk about something that maybe was in the past or maybe in something going on in the present. But yeah, thanks again. Catch you in the next one.